Okay, so today we're going to be sending email from Excel, but interacting with your Gmail account. Not only that, if all goes well, we'll actually also be sending text messages today as well. So kind of two things, and they're really similar to each other, at least the way that we're going to do it. Now, the first thing that we have to realize is that, and what we're using today, we can interact with any SMTP server. So SMTP is stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. It is the way that we send email on the internet. And we could hook this up so that you could send this using your university account. So, I know all the information we need to configure this to work, right here on campus, to send it with your .byu.edu address. But I think it'll probably be of more use to you for after you graduate, you'll have the example actually work with Gmail. So I'm hopeful that, in fact, to do this example today, you'll have to have a Gmail account. If you've managed to get this far in life without a Gmail account, you're probably not going to get one just for today, but we're going to need that. Now, as it turns out, Google says, listen, we do not want you authenticating using your regular account credentials. So, they're not going to let you send an email. They're not going to let you send an email unless you prove that you are who you say you are. Now, that didn't always used to be the way it was with Gmail. In the early days of Gmail, they had something called an open relay server, which was just if you knew how to talk to that server, you could send a message and it would just send it without authenticating you. It was great for spammers. And Google pretty quickly figured out we got to cut that out. And so, they made it so you had to authenticate. But what they're saying is, listen, if you're going to use some other software to authenticate, in other words, not just coming through their front door of authentication, they don't want you using your regular credentials because they're worried that you're not going to keep them safe. And so they say, listen, you've got to get a special password called an app password to be able to authenticate from something outside the normal authentication channel. So we're going to have to get another password that we'll use just for sending this message. And that's kind of nice because what that's going to do is it's going to kind of open up a second way to authenticate for your Gmail account to be able to send just for sending email. And then, at the point where you say, what, I don't need this anymore, you can turn that off. Like you can get rid of that credential and then, your other Gmail account stays just the same. So you can kind of enable these individual app passwords, turn them on and off at will, which is really quite nice. However, to be able to do that, Google is saying, listen, if you're doing this, you're probably going to be skilled enough to set yourself up with two-factor authentication on your account. In fact, we will not allow you to create an app password unless you have two-factor authentication set up. Now, what is two-factor authentication? The first factor is your password, right? So your username and password, but then there has to be some other way for you to prove that you are who you say you are. By the way, how many of you already have two-factor authentication set up on your primary email account? Looks like maybe it's a little bit more than half of us here in class. If you don't, you should. And so, in fact, to be able to do the example today, you're going to have to set up two-factor authentication on your Gmail account. Now, whether that's your primary email account or not. Let me just get on my soapbox for a minute and talk about how important it is to protect your primary email account. How bad could your life get if somebody got control of your primary email account? If a bad actor got control of your primary email account, what are some things that could go wrong in your life? Yeah, go ahead.
I store a lot of my passwords associated with my Google account where it says save password. And so, I'm sure that they would probably be able to do all of that.
Oh, that's right. So if you're using Chrome as your email or as your password manager, which is really common, if they can get access to your Google account, they have access to all those passwords. So immediately they know everywhere that you've got an account, and they know the password to authenticate at that account. And even if they needed to reset one, if they've got your primary email address, they can use that to reset your password anywhere. So not only do they have access to it, they can lock you out. And by the way, how hard is it for you to talk to Google and say, hey, I really am me, and someone else has control of my account? That's a nightmare. Anyone ever had to do it? No, because when that happens, what do? You throw that account away and you get a new account. Like talking to a human at Google is nigh impossible. So yeah, it really will be a nightmare for you. Now, here's the thing is that, so if someone guesses your password and they've got access to your account, you're in deep trouble. But if you've got two-factor authentication set up, guessing your password isn't enough. And guessing your password is a pretty easy thing to do. You might think it's not so easy, but the people who study passwords, they can do this. And so by setting up saying, listen, you've got to use your phone, send me a text message when I authenticate to make sure that I am who I say I am, that's really going to make your life more secure. And it's required to do the example here today. So let's just go ahead and kind of go through that process. And so kind of step one for today is going to be getting your app password for your Gmail account. So I'm going to follow this link. And what's going to tell us here is that step one is you got to have two-factor authentication set up, or two-step verification, they call it here. So it says go to your Google account. I'm going to follow that in a new tab, and then come down to security, and then app passwords. So this is where we're headed. So let's just do that one more time. So I followed this link to go to my Google account, which is just myaccount.google.com. Click on security over here, and then come to recent activity, come to app passwords. So down here, I'm sign into Google app passwords. Gonna check to make sure that you are who you say you are just by asking for your password. And now we're gonna get, but I wanna make sure that we get here and then we'll do this part together. So anyone need help getting here? Let me know and I'll come give a hand. Anyone saying, I'm almost there, just give me another half a minute or so. Okay, looks like we're ready to go. All right, so select an app, it says. I'm going to call this doing this for mail, select a device, and I'm going to come down here to other. The whole point of this device here is just so that later when we're looking at my list of app passwords, I can know, oh, that's what I was doing with that app password. And so here I'm going to call this send mail from VBA. Now, when I click generate, it's going to show that password. And I don't really want to record this password because chances are I'll forget to delete it after class. So I'm going to do this off screen. But this is what that's going to bring up. It's like when you hit generate, it is going to bring up something like this. And this is the password that you're after. So you need to copy that password and maybe paste it into Notepad or something, but just make sure that you don't lose it, because once you click done, you will never see that password again. So now we can see that I've got one app password here. Send mail from VBA is what it's called, and I can delete it just by getting rid of it here. Okay, questions? Oh, we're supposed to go through two-step verification. Does anyone, I didn't mean to do this first. I meant to do two-step verification first. Is there anyone who doesn't have two-step verification set up that wants to do it right now in class? Okay, so let's go through that, and then we'll go through the app passwords again, because you couldn't do that if you didn't have two-step verification turned on. So let me just make sure that I've got that password saved where I can get at it later in class. All right, so yeah, I wanted to come to two-step verification first, and let's go through that process. So allow two-step verification, go to Google, navigate to security, select two-step verification and get started. Okay, so going back to my Google account, under security, I'm going to find two-step verification. So I'll click on two-step verification. You can see I already have it on for this account. But here there's should be some way to turn it on, and it will like ask you for, how do you want to actually get connected? How do you want to be verified? and you should be able to do that. So is there anyone who's trying to get two-step verification on that needs a hand? All right, and then once you've got that two-step verification turned on, then we'll go back to that same process. If I can find it. Yeah, so on my Google account, go to security, and then app passwords, and then select mail, give it a name, and then you've got the password. So you will use your Gmail name, your Gmail account name, and this password to authenticate for the purposes of sending mail. Any questions before we get into the code? All right. Okay, so we need to download these two files. So your send Gmail, XLSM, that's the workbook we'll be working in, and this email message. Now, when you follow this link, it's probably just going to open it up here in the browser. And so you'll just like want to do Control S. Can you right click and save? Yeah, right click and save as, or hit Control S, and that will allow you to download that file. So we'll need that as well. The idea, here's the task for today. We're going to assume that you have gotten an internship at the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau. And these are the cases that you've been assigned. So you've been assigned to kind of review complaints dealing with the anti-lock system, the anti-skid brake system in vehicles. And so you've got complaints that people have made about these. And so your job is to kind of interact with these folks, see if you can get some more information, and you're trying to find out, should we be issuing a recall for some of these complaints that are dealing with the anti-lock brakes. And so, we've got some information here. So here we've got Sharon Schindel from Lewiston, Ohio. She has a 2018 Chevy Silverado that failed in 2019. They're all going to be anti-skid system because that's what we're dealing with. There were 5 people injured in this. ABS brakes. So here's a summary of the complaint. When applying the brakes in normal conditions, the pedal went to the floor. The brakes failed to stop the vehicle, causing 3 accidents. Look, after the first accident, stop driving that car. Anyway, I guess the first 2 weren't serious enough to prevent it from going. All right, so so the task then is going to be to reach out and make initial contact with these folks. So you don't have their email addresses because Sharon probably doesn't really want to get an email from you. So let's just kind of fill this in with some information here. So this is going to be where we're going to be sending these emails to. So you want to put in here an email address that you have control of other than your Gmail account. So I'm just going to use my university account. And I'm going to go ahead and fill that in for all of these. Be my agent name. So this is going to be your name and then your phone number. Yeah. It should be gov@BYU. Thank you. And so I'll fill that in then with my personal information. So fill that in with your information so that when we then customize this message, we're going to plug in all the relevant information here. So we'll put the first name of the person and, so what do I drive? I drive a 1999 Ford F-350 crew cab long bed. It is a huge truck and I love it dearly. But I really want, when I send this email, I want someone to open this email. And if I got an email that said problem with your 1999 Ford F-350, I would probably open that email. That's not, you know, whoever sent this to me knows that I have that vehicle. That's not information that a normal spammer would have. And so if it makes it through the spam filter in the first place, this is probably one that I'm going to open. Now here's what we're going to say. Dear Evelyn, oh, what's your name? Sharon. Dear Sharon, when I heard about the trouble you had with your, what was it? With your 2018 Chevy Silverado, I was deeply troubled. I've recently been assigned to your case. I want to give you my contact information and let you know that the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau is currently evaluating the Chevy anti-skid brake system for a possible recall. If you would like to provide any more information about the incident you experienced back in 2019, please don't hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Gov Allen, Safety Analyst, with my telephone number. Okay, pretty good message, I think. And we've downloaded that message. So we've got kind of the information that we need here to be able to fill that message in and send the message. And so the idea here is that, you know, that file is called email_message.txt. That's put in here as a kind of a parameter because, you know, it may be that as you're configuring your data, that you've got different, you know, definitely sending them to different people, but depending on this, you might have different messages that are going out to different, you know, different templates that you're working with, you know, but all going to be populated with the information that's, you know, here in this table. So we're going to pull in the first name from here, all the make, model, year, fail date, all this other information we're going to plug into the email address or plug into the email that we're then going to send. Okay, so that's the task. Any questions on what we're going to try to accomplish here? All right, so let's look at the code that we have in here. So let's look here at, so module 1 is the one that we're going to be modifying. So we've got this subprocedure here called send mail. And I've kind of done some of the busy work for us to be able to get through this example all today in class. We'll be extending this quite a bit. But you'll notice we have another module here called mod Gmail. Let's just go ahead and take a look at that one. We are not going to make any modifications to this, but I wanted to walk you through this because this is a function then that I wrote that will send Gmail. You send it the information and it will dispatch that message to the Gmail server. So this function send Gmail then has the first parameter is an email address that we're sending this to. So we're going to send then who it's coming from. This is going to be your Gmail account. You're going to give it a password to authenticate. That's going to be that app password, but we'll show you how we're handling that. You're not going to put that app password in your code. We're doing something kind of slick with it to protect it. You're going to pass a subject. You're going to pass a body. And then optionally, you can pass a path to an attachment. So if you want to attach a file, you could attach that here as well. This is then going to use two objects. These are Microsoft objects. They're only available on Windows. So if you're on Mac, this approach won't work for you. So one is going to be the message object itself. CDO stands for Common Data Objects. So one is the message, and that's going to be all the information about what we're actually sending. But the configuration object is how we're getting connected to the mail server to work with. And so everything up here is just getting us to where we can establish the connection. So this first set is saying, listen, we've got a parameter here called send using. There's several different methods we can use to talk to a server. And so we're going to use this one, number 2, which is send using a specific port. So it's different if I'm going to be working with like an Exchange server made by Microsoft, but if it's a normal SMTP server, this will be the preferred way. Now, this next argument here is the host name that we're going to talk to. So if I were sending this from BYU's campus, it wouldn't be smtp.gmail.com. It would be gateway.byu.edu. I mean, it's just called gateway.byu.edu. So that's just the host name of the server I want to talk to. Then we've got to have a port. Did we talk about ports? We talked about ports when we were doing database stuff, didn't we? So anytime you're communicating with a server using an internet protocol, the host name will get you to the machine, but that machine could be listening on several different ports. So it listens for web traffic on port 80. It listens for like MySQL database traffic on port 3306. It listens for encrypted email on port 465, unencrypted on port 25. There's like lots of different services that server might be running. And so it's not enough to know the machine you want to talk to. You got to know the machine you want to talk to and the port that machine is listening on to be able to communicate with a specific service on that machine. It turns out that Google's SMTP outgoing mail port is port 465. Wow, Professor Allen, you just must be so smart to know that. How did you find that out? Gmail, SMTP port. Port 465. I mean, it comes up kind of big and bold. Presumably, coming here a little bit deeper, it would show us what the SMTP host name, HOST name. Oh, this is a different one than I found, but it looks like it's listening on port 465 as well. We'll stick with the one that I've got in there because I know that one works, but presumably this one would work as well. Okay, so it turns out that we are going to authenticate. So we're turning this on. We're saying we're going to use authentication. Again, Gmail is saying if you're going to send mail here, you've got to be authenticated. Now, I'm going to tell it who it's coming from. Right, because it's the use. This is the from password. This is the from that I'm sending in here. That's going to authenticate me. The password, and then I'm using a secure socket layer that's set to true. And so this is now configured to interact with that server the way that server is configured to work. So that's going to get me connected to that server. And then here's the message. Who am I sending it to? This one's kind of interesting. I'm going to say who it's coming from. And remember when I told you in the early days of Gmail, you didn't have to authenticate? You could just send it here. So you had to say who it was from. So it would know who to put in the from message. And you could put whatever you wanted to. It didn't, because you're not authenticating, it doesn't verify that you are who you say you are. Has anyone ever gotten an email message from someone that purports to be from someone that person did not send? So it's happened to a few of you here. It used to be more common. And it's because the protocol allows it. Gmail does not allow you to do it, but the protocol allows you to do it. And so I'm putting this in here, but it really doesn't matter what you put in here. Google is going to say it's from whoever you authenticated with. But you know, if you're I left this in the code because if you're doing this from a different environment where you can specify who it's from, I wanted you to have that example. We'll specify then the subject and the body. A few more things that I left in here just in case you want to play with them more. Every message can have both a text body and an HTML body. So depending on the capabilities of the way that you're consuming the email, if it can show HTML, it would prefer to show the HTML. So if you want to format kind of a fancy email message, you just have to send it in the HTML body. But you might send text body as well in case someone opens it with a mail client that can't render HTML, which would mean they're living in the Stone Age. Then they would have that as well. And then other information that you could include, including who to reply to. Now, presumably you've seen this, where someone has sent you a message, and when you hit reply, it replies to someone else. Have you ever had that happen? Really, that's pretty uncommon. Yeah, that's a really nice thing, because you know, you might send this out, but when you're having it reply, you want to reply to someone else, and so Gmail will respect that reply too. I don't have this configured to deal with that because you're not passing anything in for reply to, but you could modify this and enable that as well. Here, you would just, if there is an attachment, you're going to call the add attachment method of the message, and that'll be the path to the file you want to attach, and that'll just attach it. Can you attach multiple files to an email? Yeah, this one's only configured to allow you to attach one. So you could change it to where you could send an array of paths to attach, and it would iterate across that array. But for simplicity here, I'm just showing you, you could attach a file, and here's how you do it. We then say that message is going to have the configuration that we established, and then we're ready to send the message. Now, I've got this built into an error trap. So on error, resume next. If we have an error, just keep moving. So we try to send the message, and then we say, if error number equals 0, then we're going to do something. Otherwise, we'll do something different. what does error number 0 mean? Error number 0 means there was no error. Like this message, this send happened. And so because this is a function, then send Gmail is going to, if it happens without error, I'm setting send Gmail to true. So that when I call this function, if it succeeds in dispatching the message, it will return true. So I'll be able to know from where I call it, did the message get sent? Now, I won't know if the user received it, much less if the user opened it. All this true is, did the outgoing mail server accept that message to be dispatched? So if the email address is bad, if it's malformed, if it's not a routable email address, that will fail immediately. But if it's not the right email address, or if it's not even even it's well formed, but not anyone's real email address, I won't know that at all. But just did the outgoing mail server accept it? If it didn't, I want to know that. So I'm going to return false, and then we'll kind of put some information to the immediate window to kind of show what that error was. So, what's the email that we were trying to send it to, and so forth. And then that's the end of that function. So what we need to do is, so this is kind of ready, set up to send Gmail. We just need to get our module 1 configured to go through that process. All right. So let's go ahead and get this configured for the password. So here's what I've done. Let's go ahead and kind of put that password into this workbook, and then I'll kind of show you what I've done. So here we've got a ribbon, a tab in the ribbon called email. And it's going to be on Thursday of this week when I show you how to do this, how to be able to create custom ribbons that attach to a workbook. So whoever has that workbook will have that ribbon, and you can attach that to your code. So, this one is going to launch your code to send email. That's not ready to run yet. But this set credentials and clear credentials is already done. So I'm going to go ahead and click on set credentials. And what this is saying is that we're going to take your password, that app password, and we're going to embed it into this workbook. But we do not want it to password. We do not want to embed that in clear text in the way that someone might be able to find it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to store it on a hidden sheet, but we're going to store it encrypted. So we're going to come up with a key here that will be used to decrypt it. Now, I'm not going to expect you to remember that app password. Like it was 16 characters long and they were random. Don't try to memorize that. But here you could memorize some other key. I'll just use something simple that I can type in. I'll put in my Gmail account name. And then I'll paste in that app password. And now when I say OK, it's going to write that password onto a hidden worksheet, but it'll be encrypted. So the code to do the encrypting is all built into this workbook and to decrypt it as well. But let's go ahead and take a look at how that's stored on the worksheet. So I'm going to come over here to where my worksheets are, and I'll right click, and I will choose unhide. But wait a minute, unhide is not even available. That's because I didn't just make it hidden, I made it very hidden. Let me show you how to see a very hidden worksheet. To see a very hidden worksheet, you've got to do it through the VBA editor. So I'm going to come here, and I've got my Send Gmail workbook, and I can see here are my 3 worksheets. So I've got data, one that says data, one that says system info. Those are the 2 that you can see, data and system info. But there's another one here called credentials. When I select it and look at the properties under visible, you're going to see that it is very hidden, right? There are 3 choices. A worksheet can be hidden, visible, or it can be very hidden. And very hidden means there's no way to show that worksheet through the user interface. You've got to come do it here through VBA. So it's kind of protected from the casual user to be able to get at. Let me come in here and change it to visible. And now I should be able to come back and see that credentials sheet. So here then is, I'm not even sure what all 3 of these are. One of them is the password, one of them is the username. I forget what the other one is. And so that is stored in an encrypted form, and it will be, I think one of them is just a text that I can check to make sure that it was encrypted correctly. I'm sure it's decrypted correctly. And so to decrypt this, I have to provide the key that I used to encrypt it in the first place. So now I've essentially locked up that app password behind a password that I might be able to remember. And so by remembering that key now, it will invoke the app password that we've got built in here. Okay, with that whole, how we're handling that password, just kind of show me on a scale from 0 to 5 how comfortable you are with what we just did. 5, 4, 5, 5, 5. Okay, so it looks like you're feeling pretty good about it. I'm going to go ahead and set this back to very hidden to hide that. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take a look at what we already have going on here in send mail. So we have set a username and a password. So we have a variable for username and password. And so here what I'm saying is, listen, if the length of the username is 0 or the length of the password is 0, right? If I multiply the length of those two together and that thing comes out as 0, then at least one of those was 0, meaning there's no username or there's no password, then I want to get the credentials. And so that will show the form that gets these credentials. And that will pause my code until that form gets closed. If there's no password entered, then it's going to exit the subprocedure. Otherwise, it's going to assign the username and password from that form. So let's just go ahead and see how that works. I'm going to go ahead and run this. And it's saying, yeah, we don't have a username and password. It's remembering the key that we had. So I'm just going to say OK. And then it runs through and we've got that. So in fact, let me go ahead and just stop this here. S top. We'll run that again. We'll say OK. And now in my immediate window, I should be able to look at my username. Yeah, so that has read that username from that encrypted worksheet using the key that I supplied. So now we've got that username and we got the password as well. Okay, so now we've handled the authentication part, at least managing our credentials, and now we're ready to start going through the process of actually getting this to do what we want it to do. So let's notice here that we've got a variable called template. And let's go ahead and open up the file to hold that template. And actually, we're going to open that up. That's going to be something that we've set in here that we might have to open that depending on which row we're looking at. So let's start off by making a loop that's going to just loop across these rows. So let's see, do we have a variable for controlling the row that we're on? Yeah, we've got row as a long. So let me set R equal to 2, because that's going to be my first line of data. Now, my plan here is when we successfully send a message, I want to write in the date and time that we sent that message. So in case we've got partway through this list and there's an error, I want to be able to know which ones we actually successfully sent. So imagine that we're going to have in here, how do you put in the current date? Is there a keystroke to put in the current date in Excel? Anyone know it? Control Shift colon. Wonderful. That's the time. That's all I needed to know. Thank you. You guys know this one? Like control quote copies the cell above it. Did you know that? It doesn't copy, apparently it doesn't copy the format, but that's kind of a cool one too. Okay, so what I want to do is when I go to run this, I want to say, listen, if you've already sent this message, don't run it. So I first want to loop until I find a blank cell here in column 1. So we're going to do until, what is this sheet called? Data dot cells, row number R, column number 1, dot value is equal to a 0-length string. So do loops, I'm going to put do events in here. case I forget to increment R or something. Go ahead and move my stop down here. I'm going to run to that stop now. Whoops, not next. What's the end of a do loop? Loop. Okay, so now that should have taken R to 4 up here. So let's just take a look at R. R is 4. Excellent. So here we are finding where to start, finding the row to start sending the messages. Now I'm going to want to do another loop now similar to actually handle the sending of the messages. So now I'm going to want to do until column 2 is blank. So column 2 is going to be, I'm expecting this to be filled out with the messages that I'm sending. So I'll use that to control how far I'm going to continue iterating. So now here's a loop to send the messages. And here, let me just go ahead and do debug.print. And let's print the email address of the person we're sending to. And that is going to be in column E. So I'm just going to step through this. Shift F8, debug.print, data.cells, VALUE. Oh, I missed this closing quote on my column letter. So I'll use Shift F8 just to step through this. And we should see that that's going to print then that email address. And if we kind of go through, it'll keep doing those, even though it's the same email address on this one, because I'm sending these all to myself. All right. So at this point, we're kind of ready to start configuring that message. So let's start by reading in the message that we're after. So here we've recorded which message file we're going to use. So we're assuming that we have downloaded that message, and we're going to assume it's in the same folder as our Excel workbook is. So we're going to put that into our template. So let's just go ahead and open. So here's opening a text file. So we're going to look in the same path where this workbook is. This workbook.path and application path separator. And now we need to get the name of the file, which is in column B. So data cells column B.value. And we're going to open that for input as number 1. Close number 1. Now, let's just plug this into our message. So our message, we've got a variable up here called message. I think I was going to use the template, but I think that's from when I was originally thinking of just opening the same file for all of them, but we've got it to where we're going to send possibly a different file for each one. So message equals, and we're just going to say read that whole file into memory, into this variable. And so that's going to be the input statement. The input statement takes a number of characters to enter, and I'm going to skip by that first one for now, and which file to read it from. So read it from number 1. So I need to tell it to read all the characters. Fortunately, there's a function that will tell me how many characters there are in that file. It's called length of file, LOF. And then I'll put the file number without the pound sign as an argument for that. And so this will read the whole text file. The last time we worked with text files, we're reading them one line at a time. Here's a different approach that just says read that whole file into this one variable. So I'm just going to come and step through those, Shift F8. And I should be able to see now that message has that whole text file now in it. Now, you'll notice I've configured this text file so that the first line of it is going to be the subject line, and then the rest will be the body. But before I cut those apart, I'm going to want to go ahead and kind of fill in these parameters. Because while this is in one block of text, I can just do a replace that will replace every occurrence of model year, whether it's here or wherever else it might be in this message. And then once I've done all of that, then I'll go ahead and separate it into its message and its subject. Whew. Okay, so now, any thoughts? What should we do? Any thoughts on how we should kind of go about this next part? So the idea is I'd like to make this tool general enough that it's not kind of hardwired to this message. It's not hardwired to any particular column names. If I was to bring in a different set of columns in here, I'd want it to be able to replace those as well. And I have made this message. If we look at the message here, I've made this message so that what I have here in the tags, these little tags that I've built here, correspond to the way that these are spelt. So this is model year. So there should be a model year column here. Yeah, so there's model year. Capitalization is different, but the spelling's the same. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go right across, starting in column C, and going to keep going until I hit a blank cell, and I'm just going to replace everything. Now, do I have the C summary? Is the C summary in my message? No, I don't have that there. So when I say replace every occurrence of the tag C summary, it'll replace them all, but there's none. That won't hurt. So it's a little bit of overkill here for this message, but it'll be a nice general tool that all I have to do is change the columns in here, and it could work for a different data set. So I think I've got a column variable set up. Yeah, I've got C set up as an integer here. So let's just do a loop here. We'll say for, let's do another do loop. Do until data.cells, row number 1, column number C dot value is equal to a 0-length string. And we're going to set C to start at column number 3. Another do loop. So let's do a do events. And let's put in increment C. Okay, so here we should be looking at column number 3. And all I want to do is modify message. Message equals, and I'll call the replace function. I'm going to look at what message currently is. I'm going to look for, now I want to pay attention to what I've got right here. So let me go ahead and run up to this point. And let's see what we have in that column. Okay, so right now I've got F name. Oh, shoot. I didn't quite get that one changed. It's called first name in my text file. So let's go change the header over here to be F name instead of first name. And we'll make that first change. We're not doing anything with the last name, so we can leave that as L name without any trouble. Okay, so now that should be reading first name. Okay, so I want to look at my message, and I want to look for every occurrence of the one I'm currently looking at, but I need it to be uppercase. So I'm going to wrap UCase around it. And let me add a tag bracket on the front of it and a tag bracket on the end. So we're going to look for that. So in this case, we'll be looking for first name as a tag. So now it's looking for that, and we want to replace it with whatever value we currently have, not on row 1, but on row R. So row R is the row that we're looking at. So that should be first name, that should be Eric right now. So let's take a look and see what that expression is giving us. Yeah, so we'll be replacing that with Eric. That looks great. So now let me go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and run that line. And I'll take a look at the message again. We should now have replaced first name tag with Eric. And you can see that this loop is going to kind of just continue to do that. So we're going to go through for every single one of those columns, and it's going to operate that same logic. So I'll put a stop out here to finish that loop out and run to there. If we look at the message now again, we should see that it's fully not parameterized, it's fully filled in. Problem with your 2016 Ford Explorer, dear Eric. When I heard about the problems with your 2016 Ford Explorer, currently evaluating the Ford anti-skid system for a possible recall, and contact me, and my contact information is here. Okay, so it looks like we've got the message ready to go. Now we just need to actually send the message. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to want to send Gmail. And was it just called send Gmail? Yeah. So send a Gmail. Who am I sending it to? Now, in this case, we're not quite sure where that email address is. So we've gone through all of these columns. But we're going to need to know, we're going to need to kind of find that email address and remember it. So what I'd like to make is that I don't really care where the email address is as long as it's in there and it's called email. So let's do this. We've got a variable up here called email. So as we're going through this, let's just check to see if we're looking at the email. So let's say if the uppercase version of what we're looking at without those angle brackets is equal to email, then email equals what we're looking at. So now, once I've looped through this, we should be able to, who are we sending it to? We're sending it to email. Who is it coming from? Now, in this case, all these emails are going to come from who I'm authenticated as. And remember that by this point, we've got a username and a password already filled in. So who it's coming from is just going to be username. Next argument is the password, PW. Next argument is the subject. We've got a subject variable set up. I don't have it actually configured yet, so let's go ahead and put that in. And then we'll go back and fill in the subject. And then we're going to attach the body, which is called message. That's going to return true or false. So I'm going to go ahead and put the if statement in here. It's kind of a neat trick. And I don't think we've seen anything like this yet. Because send Gmail returns true or false, it will evaluate to either true or false. So if I use it in an if statement, if it returns true, it'll execute this code. If it returns false, it'll execute this code. So we'll treat those here in just a second. But before I forget, let's go ahead and build our subject. So our subject is going to be, it's going to be that whole first line. So I'm going to come back up here and declare another variable. I need to declare a variable called position. I need to find where the end of that first line is. So I've got an integer variable called POS, and I'm going to set POS equal to the in string, starting at the 0th or the first character, looking at my message and looking for the new line character, VB new line. Should be able to run that line. We'll check what my position is. Yeah, so I found it at 37. So now I should be able to say that my subject is equal to the left of the message. How many characters do we want? We want position -1. And so that's going to pull off just the subject. Variable not defined, MESSA, oops. So my message, no, my subject. It's now just that first part. And now I want to make the message just everything after that. So message equals the mid of message. Now, if we have it start with position, it's going to pick up that end of line sequence, that hidden character that indicates the end of a line. And in Windows files, that's actually 2 characters. It's character number 13 followed by character number 10. So I am going to do the position +2. So I don't want to start with that first character. I want to shift over 2 to get where the message first starts. I'll run that line, and I should be able to come back here and look at the message again. And now we'll see that it starts right there with Dear Eric instead of having the subject. So I've split apart that subject. I'm treating that subject and the message in the same file just to keep it together, to make it easy to manage. But now that the parameters have been filled in, I'm ready to split it apart. So now I think I'm ready to send that. Question?
I think I might have missed something.
Yeah, we did. I had, when I was getting this set up for today, I didn't realize that I had this was called F name on the worksheet. So over here on the worksheet, just change that to first name, and then it will match the file. I mean, alternatively, you could change your file to say F name instead of first name, and that would work as well. So the point is the tags need to match whatever you've got on that first row. So I think that's ready to send the message. Now, if it works, what do we want to do? Well, we want to write right into column 1 of the row that we're on. And we're just going to put in the current time. So if that succeeds, we're going to write to column 1 of our current row, and that's going to equal now. So now just reads the current time, date and time from the system clock. If it fails, I think we want to probably put the fact that it failed. So why don't we, in that case, we're just going to write failed. No reason to try to sending it again until we kind of diagnose what the problem might be. But either way, once we've tried to send that message, we're going to write something into column 1 so that next time we run it, it won't try to send that message there again. Question? I think that's it. I'm going to leave the stop. I'm going to go ahead and stop my code because I'm really not sure that I've run everything that needs to be run to make this first one get sent. But I'm going to go ahead and run it again. And hopefully it'll make it all the way to this stop, and it will have sent a message and we'll be able to see it. So we'll run this. asking for my key. Because I clicked stop, it lost that key. So I'm going to type that back in again. Hopefully I remember it. I had to stop here. I'll get rid of that one. And it looks like it failed. That's no good, but let's see what it printed when it failed. Problem sending message, at least one of the from, sender, or fields is required, and neither was found. From, so from wasn't found. Interesting. Username looks like it's there. Okay, so I'm going to come back here and try to send this again, but let me go ahead and kind of step through this and see what I've got going wrong. So I'm going to step into this. It may be. But it says it's required. Let me just, at this point, let me just check. I mean, it says that like it didn't say it was like invalid. It said it was like missing. But we may try to set that to have that. I didn't think it needed it, but we'll try it. Oh, that still failed. I don't think it needs to be that way. At least one recipient. Oh, at least one recipient is required. You just finished running that off. Okay, so, oh, email just says email. That's the problem. Because I'm looking at row 1, I should be looking at row R to get that email. So back up here where I was going across the columns, I'm saying, hey, if email is what we're looking at, got to make sure I'm reading off the row that has the data, not the row that has the labels. We'll try this again. It's asking for my key. From or sender fields is required. Neither was found. From or sender. To here. From here. Zoom recording. All right, yeah, so what needs to be done here is that on our username, we have to add in the @gmail.com on the end. Then if we run it, should dispatch that message and we see that it's recording the date there. Excellent. All right, so let me just go ahead and open up my email and see if that came in. Uh-oh. Testing center sent me a message. Finals are approaching. Get your tests over here. And that's not showing up here. So let's take a look at spam and see if they go to spam. Not there. Let me go look at my BYU account. It's supposed to get routed here, but sometimes it takes a minute for them to show up. So let's go to mail.byu.edu. Here's one that I sent earlier while I was getting ready for class. Interesting. Those of you who got this to send, did it actually email come through to you? So next place I'm going to check is filter, byu.edu.
Mine actually just, they gave me the date on the Excel file, but then I got an email in the one I was trying to send it from that got delivery status notification failure.
Interesting. I'll take a look. Oh, let me check on my Duo. Yeah, I should be able to go look at my Gmail account and see what got sent. I think they'll show up there. Nothing's been filtered lately. Look at my sent items. Yeah, so we can see that these got dispatched. They just haven't made it through the system yet. So we can see them fully in here. There's Eric. So if you got a thing that said that the message failed getting delivered, it's probably a problem with the email address that you entered here. So check to make sure you've got that email address there. Let me do this. Let me go ahead and do a different account. So here that is, we can see that got dispatched here. So I think it's just being handled by BYU's University Mail servers, making sure that it's okay before it comes through. But here we can see where I've sent it to myself in a different account. Okay. Yeah, probably would make sense to come in here and say if R is greater than 8, then exit do. I don't know that you really need to send all of those to see if it works, but I'll send a few more. Press F5 and it should go through and we can see it sending those one at a time and getting sent out. Maybe those will come through before class is over. We've got 5 minutes. Question?
I have an error for second the server.
So your error is what? So the message that you're getting printed in the immediate window says it can't be sent to the SMTP server. So if you're getting that, what wireless are you on? Are you on guest? Are you on BYU Secure or EduRoam? EduRoam, I think, should be able to do this. So we'll have to take a look here. Maybe come down right after class and we'll see if we can track it down. Okay, so in the last 5 minutes, we got to see how to send the text message. What we're going to do to send a text message, like sending text messages, like generally is not a free thing, but all of the major carriers have what's referred to as an email to text gateway. So if you know how to send an email to your phone number at that carrier, it will, for free, it will convert that email into a text message and send it as a text message. So that's what we have. Some of the information you'll need for that is over here on the system info. So what you have here is the gateways for these main carriers. So I'm on AT&T. So for me, it's txt.att.net. So what I need to do is put my 10-digit telephone number at this domain and just send an email to that. So I'm going to be sending off here 100 or 200 emails, and that's going to take a little while. I'd like it to send me a message when it's done doing it. So like when we're down here, let's just do another send Gmail. Now, where we're going to be sending it to is my 10-digit number at, what was it? ATT txt.att.net. Username and password will be the same. Subject, don't want to be too long because it's a text message. So what we should then get with this, oops, no parentheses because I'm not doing anything with the what comes back. Let me put a stop here. I think because I've already done all of those, it should skip right by this and go directly to this send message. Okay, so we're through that part and we're ready to do this. Let me go ahead and turn off my do not disturb. Hopefully we'll see this message come through. So I'll run that. And I guess it would have been good if I would have like printed the output so I could see if it was going to happen. Seems like we should have heard it by now. Okay, so it accepted it. Hopefully, 801-372-0683. That is my phone number. Things just aren't working as nicely as they should be today. That should go through. We'll check to make sure that it actually got sent. Yeah, so it's been sent twice. It may just take a minute to come through. Anyone actually get that to work to send their text message to them? So it looks like a few of you have succeeded in that. So it should, hopefully it'll come through here soon. But as we've only got 45 seconds left of class, I'm not counting on it happening before we're done. But that's the nuts and bolts then of sending email and text messages with VBA. Questions? All right, there's a few of you that had some strange messages. Come on down here. We'll take a minute and take a look at them. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed.